You're probably here because you want a piano that feels solid under your fingers, sounds good enough to keep you motivated, and doesn't end up as a dusty piece of furniture after a few months. You're not looking for a laundry list of specs that sound impressive on paper. You want something you can actually live with day to day, and that justifies the money you're putting down. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you're shopping for a digital piano, the first thing that trips most people up is the gap between what the marketing promises and what you actually experience when you sit down to play. A lot of units out there look sleek, have a bunch of voices and effects, but when you press the keys the action feels cheap, the sound gets muddy, or the interface is a nightmare to navigate. That uncertainty can make you hesitate, especially if you've already spent money on a cheap keyboard that just sits in a corner, gathering dust because it didn't feel right. The Kawai CA401 digital concert piano tries to bridge that gap. It's positioned as a home-oriented instrument that brings a bit of concert hall realism into a living room, and it does that by focusing on three practical pillars: the feel of the keys, the credibility of the sound engine, and the usefulness of the built-in learning tools. The Rosewood finish isn't just a visual cue, it signals that Kawai is aiming for a more refined aesthetic that can actually blend with home decor, so you don't have to hide it behind a cover. If you're a serious hobbyist who has been playing on a basic synth-type keyboard and you're starting to crave the weight of a real piano, the CA401's GR Feel compact wooden key action is the first thing you'll notice. It uses wooden components rather than all plastic levers, which gives each key a little bit more resistance and a more authentic let-off when the hammer reaches its bottom. For someone who's been building finger strength on a lighter keyboard, that extra resistance translates into a more honest feedback loop. You hear the tone and feel the mechanics at the same time, which is crucial for developing proper technique. On the sound side, Kawai's progressive harmonic imaging (PHI) engine layers multiple recordings of acoustic pianos to create a richer tone than a single sample would provide. In real-world practice, that means the lower register doesn't sound thin when you play a Bach prelude, and the higher register retains clarity when you're voicing a Chopin nocturne. Because the engine is built to respond to the velocity of your playing, the softer you press, the softer the sound, and the harder you dig in, the more resonance you get. The 192-note polyphony is also a practical safety net. You can sustain the damper pedal while playing dense chords, and the piano won't start cutting off notes prematurely, something that can be frustrating on low polyphony models. One of the more underrated strengths is the OLED graphic display. It's not a huge screen, but it's crisp enough to see patch names, lesson menus, and metronome settings without squinting. Because the interface is visual rather than a jumble of tiny buttons, you can switch from a practice mode to a performance mode in a few taps, which is a small but noticeable convenience if you're juggling practice, recording, and a quick jam session. The built-in Alfred lessons are another practical feature that distinguishes the CA401 from many competitors that simply offer a metronome. The lesson suite walks you through basics like hand positioning, reading sheet music, and even introduces simple pieces, all while tracking your progress. If you're a self-learner who doesn't want to sign up for an expensive online course, those lessons can give you a structured path without leaving the piano's interface. Of course, for everyday use, the biggest question is not just whether Kawai CA401 digital concert piano Rosewood has impressive specs, but whether those specs match the way you actually plan to use it. In the default_tech category, buyers should compare the headline features against their daily routine, setup space, compatibility needs, and how often they will use the product after the first week.